Welcome. We're happy to meet with you virtually, most of you all today, and go through our November 80 meeting information to share with all of you. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm seeing lots of really good suggestions in the chat about the only pie. If you could only have one pie for Thanksgiving, what would you choose? So thanks for joining along. We'll jump into our quote for this month. It's from Thornton Wilder, who wrote the play Our Town, among other things, but that's probably the one he's most well known for. But he says, "We can only be said to be alive in those moments when our hearts are conscious of our treasures," thinking through and being grateful for the things that we have and recognizing the things that we have that we can be grateful for. So that was a fitting quote for this month as we're getting ready to be thankful for a lot of things. So I do want to express publicly my gratitude and thankfulness for the team that we work with here at USBE. I feel very lucky to have such a dedicated team to work with, and people who are knowledgeable and friendly and willing to do the work and innovative, and I could go on for a long time, but feel really grateful for the team that we have. So thank you to all of you here. Okay, our APAC update. We had APAC at the beginning of the month. There were several things that were discussed in our APAC meeting. We actually didn't have anything really that the group voted on. It was mostly information for people or feedback gathering from the team. So a couple of the topics here were very similar to what we'll talk about on the next slide, which is the TAC update, which most of the things here were things that we also talked about with our TAC. This month, due to some scheduling issues, we had our APAC meeting before the TAC meeting, which is a little bit difficult sometimes because typically we like to share with the policy advisors what the technical advisors would recommend. But we were able to share this feedback with our APAC group and get some ideas. The first thing that we talked about was the upcoming recommendation for some K-8 legislation for reading and math. So Julie Clark from our teaching and learning team was able to share that we are looking forward to having some K-8 reading and math legislation and in the upcoming session, and was asking for feedback on what a goal should be for that legislation. The previous goal that we have, well, it's our current goal, I guess, of having 70% of third graders reading at grade level by 2027 was maybe not the right goal. To be a realistic goal, I guess it was extremely ambitious and maybe not reachable in the time frame that we had. And so we were looking for some recommendations for how to determine what a goal that would still be a stretch goal, but something that would be attainable might be, and how we might calculate that goal. So we got some feedback from our APAC group as well as the TAC. Spoiler alert for the next slide. We also shared with the APAC group the new design for the PEEP assessment that we're working on. So we have to have by next year a couple of other elements with the PEEP assessment, namely that we have to be able to provide a growth score for the individual student as well as growth for the program. So we're making some redesigns to the PEEP. Those were presented to the APAC group, and then we'll be moving forward with piloting some of those in the next couple of months and having those available and ready for the start of the next school year, have the new PEEP design ready for the start of next school year. We also talked about our development plans for the high school assessments as we're moving forward with that change from the end of grade to the end of course assessments, and talked a lot about the development that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. We've had a lot of teachers come in to write new items for those high school assessments. And then finally, we talked about any accountability implications for assessment transitions, namely the science assessments and changing from the end of grade to end of course, a little bit with math as well, but talking about what implications we might have with the accountability system with any of those changes. So those were the discussions that we had with our APAC group. Yesterday, so Emily, if you go to the next slide, yesterday we met with the TAC, or technical advisors, and we had most of those same topics, although we had a different lens on a couple of those things. So we were actually able to review our proficiency and growth results, which we'll look here in a moment at most of those as well. We were able to review those with our vendors and with our data statistics team and take a look at what those look like for this year. We also, in addition to the design of the PEEP assessment with our TAC group, we talked about plans for standard setting to include growth at that individual level. Our TAC had some concerns about individual level growth, but where it's something that's legislated, they helped us think through the best way of setting standards and being able to create those growth scores on the PEEP assessment. That standard setting will happen after the first administration in the next school year. So we're early with getting those plans, but wanted to make sure our design worked for having an entry and an exit, and then the plans for what that would look like for growth. So they gave us some good recommendations for how to run that standard setting in the summer of 27 is when that will be. We also, again, talked about our development plans for our high school and of course assessments, not as much about the actual plan, but also thinking through what might blueprints look like, having some contingency plans in place for our high school math test and what that looks like if the new math standards with the timeline for them to get approved and what that looks like in relation to assessing. So we've got a couple of contingency plans in place for those high school assessments. Again, we talked about the accountability implications for our assessment transitions as we have several transitions coming in the next couple of years. We talked about the recommendations for the K-8 literacy and math goals and what those might look like or how we might calculate those recommendations. And then Erin and Megan Tippett and their team at the Data and Statistics Department shared some look that they were doing at accuracy for everyone. So particularly looking at those places with the tails and a different way of calculating our accountability. Something that they're looking into is called the Bayesian theory or theorem and stabilization of some of those tails. Our TAC had a lot of feedback and questions for them on this model, and something that they were thinking about looking at, but the team that they were working with, I think had a government contract, and then that was not moving forward with issues with the Department of Education. So there may be some pauses on that. I'm not sure that there's a recommendation for moving forward with the Bayesian stabilization modeling, but that was one of the things that our TAC gave feedback on yesterday. So we had a full day of meetings with our technical advisors yesterday and appreciate their feedback. And our next meeting will be in January. We'll be meeting with our tech and having a lot of follow-up with many of these topics will be follow-up in January. All right, the next update, our board meeting from November, there was a question. Oh, thank you, Emily.
Yeah, and there's one.
Baked cheesecake.
No, the reading specialist said the K-8 literacy and math goals would mean an abandonment of Acadians as the K-3 measurement. Is that true?
So, how, oh good, appreciate the stretch goal. Okay, so the K-3, if there was a stretch to a K-8, would that be an abandonment of Acadians as the K-3 measure? So right now, no, there's still legislation and board rule around administering K-3 early numeracy and literacy assessments. I don't see that changing because even if this K-8 legislation were to pass, there would still need to be some kind of measurement of those early literacy and early numeracy instructional pieces to make sure that we're meeting those milestone marks at 3rd grade and again at 8th grade is likely what the goals would be at. So I would still see that there would be a need for an early literacy and numeracy assessment to check along the way and make sure that we're making the improvement getting up to that 3rd grade benchmark here. The recommendation is that we utilize RISE instead of Acadians as the measurement of where students are meeting, whether it's reading on grade level or math on grade level or whatever that goal would be, that they're utilizing a different measure instead of Acadians as that measurement of reading on grade level. But it wouldn't necessarily mean that we would get rid of the other early literacy and numeracy measurements since we are not administering other assessments in those grades. Do you have something else to add?
No. That was Hal's question.
That's right, sir.
We mandated to have growth in biokinetics.
So Hal, your question about mandating to have growth on the other science, the high school science assessments, could we look into getting a waiver from the feds on this? So that's a good question. I know that's something that we talked a little bit about just as far as implications for accountability with assessment transitions. I know, so we already assess more than what is required from the federal level at our state. The federal level only requires science in a couple of grades, but not all grades. So we assess more already than is required at our state is a required assessment, not the federal required assessment. As far as growth, what we have to have is in our accountability plan, so our ESSA plan has to show what we're doing for calculating growth at different levels. So I don't know that it would necessarily be a waiver from the feds on calculating growth in those high school science courses. It would be looking at what we're including in our ESSA plan and getting that approved. But I would double check that with our technical advisors to make sure that that's their same understanding as well. So I don't know that it's actually getting a waiver from not calculating growth on those high school science assessments, but it would be more about making sure that our ESSA plan incorporates whatever we plan to do with that. Okay, so then Hal's question or comment, let's see, will districts lose local control on the 6A aspect of the K-8 literacy math goals? Worried about the proposal. So there's not draft language that I'm aware of yet. I can talk with Julie Clark. She's the one that's helping to run that proposal. And currently what they're looking at adjusting is including professional learning, similar to what SB 127 did for reading for K3 teachers, although not to the extent, I don't believe, of all K3. I don't know that there would be funding for all K8 teachers on literacy and numeracy, but providing some professional learning support as well as professional learning support at the higher education level, and then some kind of assessment to see if a focus on literacy and numeracy is making an impact. So I don't believe there is an actual language proposal yet. I do know that this was, as far as the board, when the state board looked at funding priorities, and we talked about this a little bit in the October AD meeting, when we talked about the what passed at the October board meeting, the priorities of the state board as far as funding that they were requesting from the legislature, this K-8 proposal was the number 4 funding priority, and our assessment, our K-3 assessment money funding priority was 7 or 8, I can't, 8, thank you. So no new tests. Okay, that's a really good question and very timely. So no new tests necessarily, although I don't know what the assessment would look like in 6 through 8. So if this K-8 funding priority went through, I don't know what the 6-8 or 7-8 assessments would look like, or if that would be RISE, or if that would be a different assessment. I believe it would be a different assessment, but I'm not sure. So that I think would still be to be determined. So there is also, this is kind of breaking news, as far as the Ed Interim Committee, there is a recommendation. I just looked at the proposal yesterday. I can share the link in the comment in just a second, for some assessment changes that looks like a possibility for the LEAs to have an option to do an alternative assessment that wouldn't be RISE, but the state would still pick what that assessment would be. And it looks kind of like an option for a 3-year assessment, because there would be a requirement for a beginning, middle, and end assessment. But the state would pick the assessment or assessments and have those contracts, and then somehow the LEAs would pay the state for those contracts. I'll send you the link. This just came to me yesterday. So a board member sent it to me and said, what are my thoughts on this? So I shared my thoughts with her, but I'll share with you. This is kind of late breaking news. So as far as no new tests for the K-8, I'm not positive. So that's a maybe, depending on the middle school grades. As far as new legislation for new tests, there's some late breaking news on that.
I believe that the expectation or the request is going to include an assessment for both reading and math that are K-8
Yes.
in the
thank you.
legislation.
So I'm not sure if it'll be a new test though, but something in 6-8 may be new, but yeah, I don't know if that would be, or if what we have with RISE, if it would be required to have a beginning, middle, and end like we do with Acadians reading and math. Those are the things I'm not sure of. So in just a moment, I'll plug that link to the pending legislation, but there is language for that other one that's more like a 3-year testing option. Who do you talk to? It's Representative Lisenby, I believe, is the person who's running this legislation. So that might be the person that you would reach out to. So just a second, as soon as I'm done talking, I'll grab the link to that legislation and put that in the chat so people can read through that as well. So I believe Representative Lisenby would be the person that you would want to reach out to, and you could also reach out to your state school board member and share your thoughts on that as well. Let me double check with the state board who's helping with ideas. Do you mean who's like our liaison to the legislators? Is that what you mean with who the state board is helping with ideas? Yeah, I like Hal, I'm not sure who came up with the like I said, yesterday is the first I had heard of it. A board member shared it with me yesterday, and it's something that came up in the education interim committee meeting. So it's new information, so I'm not sure as far as the background. I shared some of my concerns with the board member that shared it with me. But I'm not sure how likely it is to get feet or traction or anything like that, but I do want to make you aware of it. And so if you have things that you like about it or issues with the legislation and would like to communicate with people, I'll double check who at our office, but I would recommend first for sure your state school board member. And then also probably Superintendent Hart might be another person to share comments with, but then reaching out to Representative Lisenby's team might be also feedback that would be appreciated. Okay, so on the next slide were the board updates. In our November board meeting, there was a request from our board in the either August or September, I can't remember which month it was, to put together a list of options for federal waivers. What are the things that we can request a waiver on, and what are the things that we're not able to request a waiver on? There was no current action on that. We just put together the list, so you can see that in any of the board minutes, and linked in the agenda. You can see that list that our team worked really hard to create. That list of what are things that are possible to request a waiver on. There was no action at this time for actually moving forward with a waiver, and we'll hold on that to determine what our board would like us to do moving forward. And then additionally, the alternate achievement science standards. So for the DLM, the EEs for science were approved in the November meeting. Coming up in the December board meeting, we have some changes to R277716, which is the alternative language services for Utah students. A couple of changes to wording, not necessarily big changes for the outcome. And I'm looking at Megan to make sure that it's clarity with the language of what's required, the changes that are in the board rule. But as far as like implementation, not a lot of changes for what people will be doing.
Yeah, the only thing was clarity in language, and then that some of the Title III monitoring could be virtual, given any school's context.
So that's coming up with the December board meeting. All right, next slide is the updates for the state data. So we are excited that Data Gateway has been updated and is now including all of the ELA data for RISE and Utah Aspire Plus for both proficiency and growth. So all of that is available and available now on the Data Gateway for the 2025 administration. As we are looking at the next couple of slides about state data, Just a couple of reminders as you're looking at comparisons from previous years. So the first reminder is that remember this spring of 2025 was the first year that we have removed the English assessment from the UA plus. So when you're looking at the ELA score, it's no longer an average of the reading and English tests, it's only the reading test that's based on. So when you're looking at the ELA score or the reading score, remember that that is different from previous years. It's only based off of the reading score now since we didn't have the English score. The other thing we want to be cautious with and reminding people when you're comparing from previous ELA years in RISE, that for the RISE assessment, remember we had the new ELA standards with new cut scores. So a reminder about using caution when you're comparing this spring 25 ELA data to previous ELA data. There are different cut scores, there are different blueprints, different things being assessed. So use a lot of caution when you're looking at comparing this year's RISE scores with previous RISE scores for ELA. And then finally, another consideration about participation. The participation report is linked under the USBE website under the assessment director resources. There is the participation report there on parental exclusion report is there. But thinking about participation and make sure that you are looking at and considering who participated before you start making comparisons. So if you have low participation, understand who did participate and who didn't participate and how that might skew your data depending on your level of participation.
Do you have questions?
Yes, okay, so data gateway. You know, Erin told me that it would have been automatic, that Tableau was also updated, but it looks like that may not have been the case. So I'll reach out to Erin and confirm when we think Tableau will be updated, and I'll get that information back to you just later in the meeting when I hear back from Erin. Okay, so Kendra, thank you. With the previous ELA being different, how are we able to look at the growth scores? And because the growth scores are determined by a cohort of student, not necessarily on the assessment, that's how we're able to make those growth comparisons. It's not just based off of the assessment, it's looking at the cohort of students, how they did on the one assessment, how they did on the second assessment, and then the growth between them. So because it's based on cohort instead of just the assessment, that's how they are able to determine growth, even though the assessment is different. Okay, so I'll reach out to Erin in just a moment here about Tableau and get a confirmation on when that will be updated. And then I'll also put in the link to the legislation. Those are the two things when I'm done talking that I'll do. Okay, so our next slides kind of walk through some of our state data. So looking at participation on RISE specifically, you can see in 2025, these are our participation rates for just the 24-25 year for ELA, math, and science. You can see that RISE, we had pretty strong participation. As we move up in grades, there was a little bit less participation, which is not different than previous years. That's been fairly significant, steady over the last few years, that as we move up in years, students don't participate as much. We did talk a little bit yesterday with our TAC about science and participation of the students on the science assessment in 8th grade, and I'm sure of participation levels there, why they started to get lower and lower, but that's something that we were analyzing yesterday. Then on the next slide is our UA plus participation. Please, I want a grain of salt on the math participation. Maureen is out of town right now, so she sent us the participation file, but the math file had a couple of SM1 sections. So I just added them all together and averaged them. So take the math with a grain of salt on what exactly is there. So I want to confirm with Maureen that that's the correct participation, but it should be about there. So again, you'll see that in 9th grade, we have lower participation for sure than 8th grade. But 10th grade is even lower than the 9th grade participation on as far as Utah Aspire Plus. The next slide shows our Acadience reading end of year proficiency for the last couple of years. So you see 23, 24, and 25 in the different grade levels, and proficiency on Acadience reading at the end of year. And then Acadience math, again, you can see proficiency at end of year on Acadience math over a 3-year cohort or 3-year period of time. exciting data about our Acadians math in the last 3 years. That's interesting and hopeful data, I think, that we've looked at. I think we've shared those data files with all of you, so this shouldn't be necessarily new information, but have those posted. The next slide is our rise. Oh no, a progress, looking at growth on Acadians reading. Again, some interesting over this last year on growth in grades 2 and 3. And then Acadians math on the next page as far as growth. And then I think it's rise after that. So, okay, the 2 rise slides. So this is rise ELA. I only wanted to put in the 25 data at first. I know you'll want to see compared to last year, but like I said at the beginning, I wanted to caution you against making those comparisons because we have new assessments, new cut scores. So I'm sharing just the ELA data for the 25 administration. The next slide does compare it to previous years, but like I said, I wanted to use caution with that comparison, but you would probably like to see that as well. So this was the comparison of the last 3 years of the ELA data. And then the math data, I believe, is next. So looking at math data over the last 3 years. Pretty good. I was impressed with our math data as I was looking at this just quickly. And then our science data on the next slide for RISE. The different grade levels and the different years. Again, science, most grades improved from the previous year, which is nice to look at. And then I believe our next slides are UA+. So again, on this, the reminder that we don't have an English from 2025. We did not have an English assessment that year, but we had the reading, math, and science. And then 10th grade, similarly. And I think we had ACT next, yeah. And then there's our ACT scores from the last 3 years. And this was ACT for just the students in 11th grade that were taking it at the state administration. I believe that's the last one. Yes, okay. So if you have any other questions, please reach out. I'll grab the question about Tableau and confirm with Erin when we should see the data updated in Tableau, and then I'll put the link in for the legislation that's pending. Thank you.
Awesome. We're going to talk about testing breaches and protocols. Fun stuff. Try not to fall asleep. I'll try to keep you awake. Moving on to the next slide. We're making sure we follow the protocols we find on an administration code R27744-8, which I'm just going to summarize real quick. Safety and ethics violations are, we did this, well, hopefully people did this and they did the testing ethics training, but they should be reported to the supervisor of the person who may be investigated, which could be the school administrator. Now, we also put an LEA administrator, assessment director, and or USBE assessment department, because sometimes people don't feel comfortable reporting to the person just above them. That might be part of the problem. And so we leave that caveat in there. And we have had a couple of calls come all the way up to the state level. And some of you have reached out to already this year about some of those calls that have come in. But we let people determine where they feel comfortable reporting, which could also be even to UPAC, because UPAC has a reporting site where people can go in and report, not anonymously. You have to leave your name, but they can go report there too. It's up to each LEA to determine your local policies and procedures regarding ethics violations. And if once you know those policies, let's communicate them to your educators so they know what they are too. And they know that you're at least moving on with that. Going to the next slide. As part of the procedure also, investigation normally is conducted at the school level by school level administrators, but it's the LEA assessment director, you guys, who review that additional investigation and determine those findings. And so up to this point, USBE might not even be involved, and that's okay, not a problem. Next slide. If the violation is of sufficient concern, then you should forward that to UPAC for review. I used to sit on UPAC, and I've talked with several of you in the past also about whether or not you should refer an educator to UPAC. It's always, I think, better to err on the side of caution. UPAC investigators are very thorough, very adept at what they do. They're very good at getting to the truth of what's actually going on. And it doesn't hurt to have a non-partial eye on what might be happening to get into some depth and you find things out. If inappropriate practice has been substantiated, then based on, of course, your LEA policies and anything else and what might happen in UPAC, it could be further training for the educator. It could be a reprimand, again, any other disciplinary action, including termination and or losing their license. And so it just depends on how severe it is. I will say, having been on UPAC, the number one question we always had on UPAC was, has this negatively impacted a child? And if that's the case, we tended to come down a little harder because we don't like it when things affect our children and our students. Next slide. So some current red flags that we've had pop up recently, Acadian's tests being used as coursework and sent home as homework. That's a little disturbing when we get that. We'll go over that in just a minute. That's not supposed to be happening, and sometimes it's unsubstantiated. Sometimes we do an investigation, you guys do an investigation and find out actually that's not what was happening, and it's okay. That's why we do the investigation, to find out what's really happening. When we have a claim that comes forward, we want to get good evidence on it. We've had some stamp testers using Google Translate. And that's because of an issue with our new vendor where they allow the students to click into the browser 3 times before they shut down the test. We're currently working at them at fixing that in the future, including coming up with a secure browser next year, but they don't have the capability yet for that. And so catching that becomes the duty pretty much of the proctors, right? You need to be moving around the classroom and seeing that out. And because of the fact that this is not on a secure platform, their system actually will let a kid not log out of the test and take the computer home. And we don't know what happens after that. It's kind of scary. But just some things to be aware of, making sure students are logging out and out of the programs, especially, and making sure that those things are secure. Next slide, please. Progress monitoring. What about progress monitoring sent home?
That should not be sent home either.
There you go. That should not be sent home either.
So it's the intent of progress monitoring is not to be used as homework for students or as practice in classes. It's intended to be used to determine if interventions are working, and practicing the actual measures can artificially inflate student scores, and then students who actually really do need support may not be identified as needing support.
Excellent. Well, next slide. So just based on the Acadian's Mental Alone test items, copies of Acadian's reading assessment should never be sent home for instruction or used for practice. It compromises the validity and value of the Acadian's reading as measure tools. Having students practice the tests, like we just said, could result in artificially high scores and prevent them receiving the instruction they need. Instead, you should focus on teaching the students literacy skills. That's right out of the Acadian's assessment manual. And so that's right, that's my source for that one. And the next one, I believe, has to do with proctoring. Yep, proctor should always be present when there's a standardized test going on for any group of students. Active proctoring should take place throughout the session, which is defined as the proctor or test administrator circulating throughout the room to ensure students are working independently and recording the responses, assisting them with technologically related questions, maintaining that quiet test environment. And so I run into this a lot when I was doing the science stuff. I'd meet with science teachers and they'd say, my administrator said I'm not supposed to do that. And you want to weep when you hear that, because why not? Well, I might see something that's on the test. And I go, yeah, you might too if you come out and help me write the test. That's okay. We understand that teachers will see things that are on the test. We understand also that most of our teachers will act ethically and and not take those items that they see and turn them into lesson plans, because we've been telling them not to do that. But we want active proctoring, especially if someone's using Google Translate to translate the stamp test. We'd like you to catch that. We'd like to find out. Our vendor pushed back and said, well, they can't really use the Google Translate. We'll see that more on the phones. So actually in Utah, phones aren't allowed in the schools. You'll see that more on the computer. Because they're not seeing that on the computer in other states where phones are allowed, weird. But yeah, a good active proctoring, we highly encourage that. We highly encourage teachers to be in proctors, to be moving around the room so they can be answering those questions and taking care of those concerns as they come up. Next slide, please. Any questions on this little reminder and stuff on proctoring and briefs? Cool. Nothing popping up in the chat either. So Maureen's not here, but I'm gonna play like I'm Maureen today. So hopefully I'll be able to get through her slides without too much pain. And if you have any questions, she's gonna be back on Monday. Send her an email. If we can answer, we will. Huh?
She'll be back tomorrow.
She'll be back tomorrow. Whoa, even better.
She just, I'm sure her inbox is full,
Yes,
so
I'm sure it's
it
loaded.
might be a few days before you get a response.
I am sure her inbox is very full. But let's go ahead. She did actually come up with some information. The pre-ID files have been added to ACT now. If you're missing your organization, if you're missing the district test coordinator, especially if you answered the survey and you're not showing up, and you're missing your students, please let her know and we can get that fixed. So far, the bulk emails coming in for ACT have been, hey, I don't have access. Well, did you answer the survey? What survey? The survey Maureen sent out back in September, a lot. So you need to answer that survey so we know who your district test coordinator is. Let her know if you're not showing up. She'll get you added in pretty quick. It's not that hard to do. We to access, the first pre-ID file has also been uploaded, and the second one will be uploaded on December 11th with students not being removed. So, going on. Please remember, you need to protect student data. We're seeing a plethora, that's my word of the day, plethora of emails coming through with student information on it that should not be sent via email. It says on a lot of our email signature sections, please do not send student information. Our emails here at the state are grammable. We can get a grammar request, and all of a sudden this information then goes out to anyone who asks for it. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. So please do not send that to us in the emails. We like to redact that when we can. It can be frustrating when we see that come in. So if you're forwarding an email from someone, please read it to make sure they didn't put some personal information in there, even if it's from a parent. It's okay. Don't send their personal information. The student ID is what we need. If we have that, we have access to everything else that we need.
I would say that would be a really good task for our assessment directors to think about how they're going to communicate that within their LEA, because I know specifically when I receive emails, it usually is coming directly from a teacher. So I think often it just might not be something that they're fully aware of, because maybe within their LEA, they might be used to that practice, but it could, be a training point or some messaging point within LEAs from teachers to refrain from sharing too much student information. When people are emailing me about students with disabilities and IEP information, sometimes I just want to close my eyes because there's just so much information in emails that's unnecessary to communicate in that method.
And especially if it's a student with an IEP where there might only be a few students in that school with IEPs, just mentioning that what that disability is can identify that student. It's so much better just to say, hey, I have a student I need to communicate about, can we call? Phone calls are great. No, we don't have it in a form that can be grammable, right? It's not going to be saved that way. And so anything that would identify a student, we do not want it in the email. It's not just their name, it's not their address. It could be just something about that student. And if it identifies that student, then that becomes a problem. So please disseminate that to everyone you possibly can. Rise update. Woohoo! Tide has been having issues. Yeah, it has. Student enrollments and class enrollments and teacher changes have been affected. The Tide team has been working to resolve it. I think since she's left, it has been.
Supposedly a fix went out.
Yeah.
After her slides were created and after she had left.
Yeah.
So if you are still seeing hanging students in Tide who maybe have had transfers or things like that, go ahead and let us know. But if you were experiencing that previously, fingers are crossed, go ahead and check those. You should be good to go now.
Yeah, We heard on Tuesday that hopefully that had been fixed, which meant with 48 hours for everything to update. Today's the day we should be seeing it where it's not a problem. So if you're still having problems, let us know and we'll
Keep troubleshooting.
We'll keep we'll keep trying it out, fixing it, trying to let them know. Your information to us helps us a lot, and we can forward that information to our vendor and have them work on it. So thank you so much for sending us that, keeping us up to date on that. Here's some resources we're trying to say. It's a core code list, a student rostering manual, at home student rostering, things like that happen when private schools, kids or homeschool kids come in and want to take a test. I know it sounds weird, but hey, they do. Sometimes even the parents want to know how well their kids are learning the stuff at home. So those are little resources from Maureen. And like I said, if you have any questions for her that aren't immediate that we can help with, just drop her an email. She's back tomorrow. I hope she had a lot of fun on her vacation. No more questions. We can go on.
All right, here we go, WIDA. I will say, this has been a theme for like the past year, but your communication on all these things that we were talking about would be the most helpful. I still get calls a lot, and I do try to share all this information with all the pertinent groups, but sometimes it is not getting to everyone, okay? All right, so just a heads up, next week, due to the holiday, DRC customer service and the WIDA client services centers will be closed. They get a holiday too, yay. Next. All right, we have one more training available for this year, and this one's going to be for our duly identified students. And that is still available to register for in Midas. And then free webinars for LEAs. These are the next ones coming up. And this is all just free webinars, also some Q&A where you can just ask questions about access testing, okay? Not required, but free, and they're always recorded. So if you miss it, you can just access these in the WIDA secure portal. All right, so we are already well into our access testing season. Please remember that in October, we did the first pre-ID upload, and all materials were ordered based on that initial pre-ID file. I keep getting emails, especially this week, with people panicking saying, we missed that window, we didn't order our materials, okay? So we do the ordering for you. The only thing that you needed to order were any alternate or Braille access tests. And if you did miss that window, it's okay. You can still order it in the additional test material ordering window, okay? And I've underlined additional because that's also another common question. People will just go to the initial materials ordering window and they're like, it says it's closed and I missed the window again. You have to go to the additional materials at that point. I know there's lots of tabs and you have to click, like double click on it all, but you still can order things if you need to. Please also note that you will not see students in AMS until the 3rd of December. And you will see all those students available for registrations, which is formerly known as test sessions. We will be doing the second pre-ID file load on the 10th, and as Scott, impersonating Maureen, said, please remember that is just adding students that are new. We do not delete and cannot delete till the testing window is closed, okay? Also, please take note, your materials will be coming very soon. In the next few weeks, the 12th or the 15th, not on the weekend. Test window is coming, and as we get nearer, I will still be communicating, and you should expect emails via the AD memo from me and also from DRC to make sure you're doing everything you need to do. So the rest of the dates, okay? And we are going to be doing observations. The observations this year will be along the Wasatch Front. If you would like for us to observe, just to watch your processes, help troubleshoot, any technical assistance, please contact myself or Tracy. And we will be contacting you in December to let you know what that observation plan is. Is there any concern about testing students too closely after winter break? Should we not test them at the beginning of the window because they just came back from the break? No, there is no concern. Please remember that WIDA Access, it's not a content test. All the content that the students need, it's given to them. This is an academic English test. So they are given all the content. It is the student that needs to take all that content and manipulate that language in the domains of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, okay? So there has never been any issue regarding testing them right after the break. I actually think that it might benefit because they're well rested and they're more relaxed, and we find that when they're more stressed out and not rested, they don't do as well. So please contact us. Remember, email is always fastest. And I think that was quick.
Acadians. Just a quick update on Acadians. We are still working on the class naming issue. I promise that we are working really diligently on trying to figure out a solution, but there's a lot that goes into the back end of it. So we meet with ALO every other week, and it's a topic that we discuss every single time that we meet. So I promise we're still working on it. And then on, won't happen until, that's what you're, yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Yeah. No, it won't. So you could say that. Okay. It will not be fixed this school year. So.
Well, it might be fixed by the end of the year.
By the end of the year.
End of the year.
But that's like a might with a big asterisk. So just, I know it's frustrating, but I promise we really are trying to work on it and solve it. Just like I said, there's a lot that goes into the back end of it. It's not just going in and simply changing names. So just know that we really are diligently working on solving that. And on our next slide, we just have our testing windows. A reminder that middle of year window will open up really soon here on December 1st. And it goes through the end of January for January 31st. And then just please have your data entry in and parent notifications sent home by the end of February. In the chat, Lynn asked, can teachers continue progress monitoring as soon as a student completes the ALO MOI, or do they have to wait for the window to close? As soon as a student has been benchmarked, you can start giving them progress monitoring. Just make sure that you're tabbing between the benchmark and the progress monitoring on that assess tab. Of course, okay. And that is all that we have for Acadians today. If you have any questions, please reach out to Jared or myself.
All right, we got more. Oh, Rise, ELA reminders. I'm gonna turn my video back on. Okay, again, contact information for Dallas and myself if you have any questions about Rise ELA. I'm secondary, so that's gonna be 6 through 8, and Dallas is elementary, 3 through 5, sometimes 6, depending on your school. Okay, all right, here we go. Please remember there are 4 types of tests. Training tests, these are optional, but highly recommended. Highly, highly recommended. A student should not be sitting down for the first time to take Rise and experiencing the online platform that they take it on. Hopefully they're not tasting it. That's although I'm sure weird things have happened. And just remember, these are training tests, so they are grade banded. So these are not meant for content, okay? These are to learn the platform and get used to the platform. So make sure that they are comfortable using all the different tools and that they are familiar with the secure browser and testing platform. Okay, benchmarks. Okay, again, these are optional for USBE. These are available in all the different grades and in all the content areas, with some, you know, that have multiple modules testing certain strands of standards. So please do note, we have had some moments in the past couple of years where teachers will reach out and they're like, well, why do we have to give the RISE benchmarks? And then we're like, you don't, they're optional. And they're like, well, our LEA told us that we have to, and that USBE said so. And then all of a sudden things get real awkward. If your district has a policy that requires the RISE benchmarks, please make sure that that you're communicating those things, at least, because we can't keep track of that. Every district has different policies, and we're not trying to put you in an awkward situation and throw you under the bus. But you know, if you can communicate certain things to us or include us in communications, or we'll always make sure that we're including you in those communications. But as per USBE, benchmarks are optional, okay? And also interim assessments are optional. So keep that in mind too. And we will always recommend that until we can build up our bank a little more, we suggest either do the interim or the benchmarks, because they pull from both of the same banks, okay? We don't suggest doing both. And then summatives, those are required, okay? And just remember, I'm sure you've heard this from Elise a lot. I know I have. Remote administration. I listen and I share. This is communication happening right here. Online, remote is for online students, fully online. If the student's taking one brick and mortar, even if that's driver's ed, which should be in a car, not brick or mortar, but you know, then they do not qualify for remote administration. Okay.
Megan on that.
Okay.
Well, I don't have a question, I just have a comment. So
Okay.
I tell our schools that the training requests are pretty much required because of the ethics training that says that they should have experience. I don't tell them the benchmarks are, but I think there is a confusion between a training test and a benchmark, which is really hard to dispel. But I actually do tell my people that they need to do the training test so the kids have experience
I
as
love
per
that.
ethics.
I
We
love
support that autonomy at your LEA.
Yes.
So I think that might be some confusion. I don't know if it's coming from where it comes from, but if
Yeah.
that's coming from our district, I think that might be a confusion with that required.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really good and useful information for us. If there is any confusion between training tests and benchmarks, the reason why we share this with you is so you can further share this with your educators in your LEA. So please make sure, if you do have a policy in place where training tests are required, that's awesome. We love that. You know, if an educator does reach out, we're not going to say, yes, you have to, okay? But your district may have a policy. So we want to be able to support you, but also there's certain things that we just aren't allowed to say. So let's see, does the interim RISE have the same amount of RISE item clusters as the summative RISE? One of my schools wanted verification. No, it's a smaller blueprint. I mean, every interim should have one cluster though.
I was just gonna email to verify, because
Yeah.
I don't think so.
The interim test is only shorter than the summative by field test spots. So that's the only way it's shorter. It should mirror the blueprint of the summative though, without field test spots. On the summative, a student may see two clusters because a cluster is being field tested. They will always be guaranteed one cluster though, no matter what.
That's my understanding too.
Teresa and I have a shared understanding, so. Yeah. Are we ready to move on? Yeah. All right, this has been shared quite a few times by Elise, just the release of, all the different assessment types. Guess what, training tests, they're not on there. They're available all year long. Okay, all year long. So, this shouldn't be new. This information should be repeat, okay? Which is better to take for our students, benchmarks or interims? It depends on your goal, honestly. Benchmarks are smaller testlets, okay? So it's gonna be more to the standard level, and also remember that you're gonna be able to view the benchmarks and actually see those items, which can help support instruction in the classroom.
You can view items on interims too.
You can view items on interims.
You just can't view it, like, you can only give 2 interims, like a fall and a winter, and that's it. Where your benchmarks, you can do as many times as you want, whenever you want, to see if there was you can do a pre-test and a post-test. So, like Megan said, it depends on the purpose. That is a local decision. We wouldn't tell you one way or the other because they serve 2 different purposes.
One thing that we would definitely caution against is trying to use interims as a predictive measure of summative. That is definitely not the purpose of our interim assessments. So they are not meant to be a predictive tool of how a student would do on summative, okay? It's how is the student doing at this point in time on this particular day with these questions. Remember, it's computer adaptive as well, okay?
There's another question.
Okay, Savannah, you had your hand up.
And then she put it in the chat.
Oh, did I just hear that we are required to complete the mid-year summative and the spring summative? No,
Sure.
you sure did not hear that.
But you do have to complete summative tests. Yes. The mid-year only has to be completed if your instruction ends mid-year and is not continuing, which happens sometimes in accelerated math. Every once in a while, we'll see it in other subjects as well, but it is far less common. So if it ends in the middle of the year and they are not continuing and completing a summative in the spring as well, I should also add that caveat. So if you have a student who's taking like Math 7 for first semester and Math 8 for second semester, they only are required to complete the Math 8 course assessment in the spring. However, some of you have elected to have them complete both, which is totally fine. You are allowed to do that because it is it's a local decision. What is not a local decision though is if the student's instruction is not continuing. So maybe they're taking Math 7 condensed, but they're actually not going to take Math 8 until they're in 8th grade. They have to take the Math 7 the Math 7 summative when their instruction ends in December, if they're not continuing with math instruction in January. Or for some of you on trimesters, you might be doing first and second trimester of Math 7, and then third trimester, and then the following first trimester of Math 8. They would have to take the Math 7 mid-year summative because their instruction that is continuing is not completing by the end of spring. If that didn't just muddy your waters, because it is kind of confusing, let me know and I'll try to make it more clear. But I'm also not sure how I can make it more clear.
And that person speaking is Elise right now. Blow up her email as much as.
No, Megan's is great.
No, Elise. Basically, like, if you have classes on like semester or trimester, it might be something that's gonna be required. Ask Elise. Okay, or maybe you're a school that's maybe kind of like the winter sports school and you are ending in the winter because everyone's going skiing, right? So you might have to do the mid-year summative because that's when the year ends pretty much, right? So Savannah, apologies, water is totally muddy at this point. So there's Elisa's email, blow her up. All right, and Julie, I am so glad that you made that comment. We are always trying to bust these rumors and myths. I'm not even sure where the interims being predictive of summative came from.
It's right in the TAM,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
It's absolutely not a myth.
It's not.
No, it's not.
But I mean, here's the thing, we were always told no, because it's taking a test at one point in time. There's no guarantee that that's how the student's gonna do on the summative test. It is a computer adaptive test.
If they had taken the test at that point, then that would be predictive of how they would do on a summative test.
So if the student took that test, the summative at that point in time, that's probably how they would have done on that day at that point in time.
That's
Yes.
it.
There is no guarantee, ladies and gentlemen, that that's happening when they go to take the summative. I'm gonna argue that if you think there's a guarantee and that it's true prediction, keep in mind it's a
Prediction based
prediction.
on how the students are doing at that point in time.
Prediction of how they're doing at that point in time.
Where the
It's
benchmarks are
not-
also a smaller selection of items now as well.
Don't mess with
That,
it.
yes, that don't match the blueprint.
I'm thinking, I'm gonna be asking that we take a look at that language to clear it up, okay?
I think predictive might be the word you're getting hung up on as an ELA specialist. So I think it might be more of an indication of the student's proficiency level at that point in time in the standards being assessed.
Thank you. We're gonna talk about that language. ELA teachers matter. Why? I know, you guys do not need more meeting today. Happy Thanksgiving. Everyone's very grateful. Should we go to the next slide? Here we go. All right, more benchmarks and interim stuff. Writing benchmarks were available on the 4th, okay? Please keep in mind, grade 7, we're gonna be doing a lot of bagging. Actually, I'll be doing a lot of bagging come February. That was the one area where we did not get enough field test, benchmarks completed for writing. So, there's only one writing grade 7 benchmark now available. So if we wanna have those other 3, we gotta get more students doing those benchmarks. We hit it in all the other grades. 7th grade, didn't happen. So, that's why there's only gonna be 1, and we'll be begging a lot again soon. So. We're gonna start to get into reporting. As reports for ELA and writing have been released recently at the end of October and just very recently, beginning of November, we've been getting a ton of questions about the ELA reports and the writing reports. We have been messaging out the availability in 80 memos, also in 80 meetings. But we've had a ton of educators reaching out saying, we're not seeing anything. How do we access all of this stuff? Please remember, our biggest tip is going to be make sure that when you're in the RISE reporting portal, that you are updating the time period. You won't see anything if you're like looking for scores, because the default is today, basically. So you won't have scores for students right today taking a test. So make sure you're changing your reporting time period in the portal. Please also remember with writing, which Dallas will get into more in a moment here, there are 2 separate rubrics. So you're gonna have 2 categories that are reported on. Those scores, please do not add them together. They are not intended to be added together. We will discuss why momentarily, but you should see a composition score and then a separate convention score. Composition is going to be the argumentative or informative rubric scale of 1 to 6, and the conventions will be on a 0.5 to 3 scale. And things are moving. I'm curious for the writing scores, what score is considered proficient? We are going to get to that in a moment, but spoiler alert, you don't get proficiency on writing scores. That disappeared years and years ago. You used to be able to get proficiency when writing was in all the grades and it was combined with the ELA test, the reading, speaking, listening. But that was a long time ago. So there is no proficiency reported for writing because it's only in 5th and 8th grade. And it will only give you a score based on the rubrics. If you take a close look at those rubrics and do a good rubric analysis, you will note that it says that for the composition rubrics, either argument or informational, 4 is meeting the standard. The student met the standard for that one piece of writing at that time. And then for conventions, a 2 met the standard for conventions and the expectations for that one piece of writing at the time. It doesn't say that in the student report.
No, the student reports don't indicate a meeting grade level standard,
Okay.
just the rubrics do.
And reporting guidance also isn't updated yet, so some of that is also still missing, even in guidance.
And it says it on the rubric. All right. Boy, I'm like breaking the internet today. Not my intention, apologies. All right, these are, hopefully these are not new to you. These have been available. These are public and available. You can find them on the RISE portal. Actually, all the information that we've been sharing is all available on the RISE portal, which the link is there. But these are the cut scores as established this past summer by Utah educators for our updated ELA RISE assessment, summative assessment. Remember that this is just reading items now, reading informational and reading literary. No longer are we assessing language standards because those were all moved essentially into the writing. And then no more speaking and listening since we are not in a place to assess speaking right now with automated scoring. So these are the cut scores that determine the different proficiency levels for ELA or reading on RISE. And so how do we better understand these reports and what they mean when I see these? There are definitely some resources to help do data dives and better understand where our students are at to inform our own instruction in the classrooms. First, the PLDs, the performance level descriptors. These are basically, it's broken up by standard and it describes the knowledge and the skills that students need and are required to show at the different performance levels of a 1, 2, 3, or 4, okay? Those are all public. Those have been available for quite some time. So if a student is scoring, you know, I don't know, a 3, you can go to those PLDs and see what is that description of a student performing at a 3. And then if you're like, hey, I want to move those students up to a 4, what instruction and supports are going to be necessary to get them up to that 4, okay? Also the reporting guide, that'll walk you through how to access everything. Elise is in the process of updating.
I have not received it yet.
She hasn't received it yet. It will be updated. But I think the biggest thing is people always say, I can't see anything. And it's that time period that always throws people off. Make sure you change your reporting time period. And then the last resource, the reading process reporting categories breakdown. This is a question that we've gotten a ton. These have actually been available for a couple of years now. These were released with the revised ELA standards. And these are what standards fit into which groups. So craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas. You're going to still see those reporting categories at a class level. You won't see it on a student level, because there's just not enough data to get down to that level. But this will help kind of inform instruction on if you see, oh, craft and structure, that might be an opportunity for growth, but hey, my students have really excelled in integration of knowledge and ideas, so that's a strength to leverage and lean on, while I can still support more growth in the standards that make up craft and structure. So the link to that document is there. Again, please be sharing this with your educators and help walk them through, you know, a data dive, and contact us if you need help going through a data dive and the potential implications, right, of what it means for classroom instruction. So we're here to help. We want to help. We want to debunk myths, not Megan create more. You know, we're getting there. So just reach out. Oh, one other thing. Dang. Right, well, we think Megan's done. She's back. A lot of people keep saying, well, we want to compare how we're doing to other schools that are similar or like our school, right? We have similar demographics and stuff. When you're in the RISE reporting portal, you can compare yourself to your district, to other classes, and to the state. But if you are wanting to compare to like or similar schools, that's not going to be available yet until the report cards are published, which is, Brittany, I believe, endish of January.
Yep.
Endish of January. Happy New Year. So if you're wanting to see comparisons like that, just wait a little longer. All the data needs to be cleaned up and business rules applied, and all the fun IT magic that needs to happen too. But in the portal, the reporting portal, you can compare to your other classes, other grades, your district as a whole, and the state as a whole. But just remember that that data you're seeing, it's raw data. No business rules are being applied to that data in the portal. I think I'm really done.
Yeah,
Ready?
you are.
Okay.
Okay. So when you're looking at RISE writing, it's important to distinguish between the assessment and classroom instruction. So RISE is an on-demand time task, and this is quite different from classroom instruction going through the writing process, where students have time to revise and polish their work over time. So just keep that in mind as you are analyzing your RISE writing data. On the next slide, we just really wanted to emphasize, I know that Megan already covered this earlier, but really just emphasizing that you are going to see two separate scores. One for composition, that's on a scale of 1 to 6, and one for conventions, which is on a scale of 0.5 to 3. And these two scores are separate from each other. They are not intended to be added together. So please, again, keep that in mind. These are two separate scores. So the rubrics can be found under resources on utahrise.org. They're also linked on this slide. There are rubrics for benchmarks in grades 3 through 8, and for the summative assessment in grades 5 and 8. Those are the same rubrics. You will also find rubrics for argumentative writing and informative writing, as well as conventions. So all three of those are listed on the Utah RISE website. You can also find annotated student sample essays for grades 5 and 8. Again, they're linked on this slide, or you can find them under resources on utahrise.org. And on our next slide here, just a couple of frequently asked questions that both Megan and I have gotten a lot, especially in the last couple of months. So the rubrics, yes, were updated for the 2024-2025 administration. We are seeing a lot of confusion around this, so please just make sure that your educators know about this change. That's where a lot of the confusion is coming, is that they weren't aware of the updated rubrics. They also haven't gone in to look at the updated rubrics. The rubrics were split to allow for a fair assessment. This allows us to score the quality of ideas or composition separately from technical correctness or conventions. So this just means that a student can still be recognized for the substance of their writing, even if they have convention errors. So that's why we have the two separate rubrics. So we can really highlight the things that the students are doing well, and then look at areas where we can help support our students. Which leads us into the next slide of what do we do now that we have these scores back, what are the next steps that we should take? So the first step is really to become familiar with the rubrics. Like I said, that's a lot of the questions that Megan and I have been receiving, is that educators are not aware that the rubrics were updated. So familiarize yourself with the updated rubrics, share those with the educators in your LEA so they can also become familiar with it. And then from there, go ahead and do a data analysis. So we suggest using the what do you see, what do you make of it protocol, and then looking at whole class implications and goals, and then also individual student implications and goals. And then from there, creating an action plan for growth. If you need support with this, please reach out to Megan or me. We can help facilitate data dives directly, or we can walk you through a data dive so you're better equipped to help your educators in their own analysis. But again, those rubrics and annotated samples are linked here. We really, really want these to be used widely and frequently as you are looking at your data and comparing it to those rubrics. And the next slide is contact information for Megan and myself. So if you have any questions or if you would like help with looking at your data, please reach out to either one of us.
Oh, I am so sorry. I was really hoping for everyone's sake I was done, so I'm not. This is short and sweet, I promise. No muddy waters here. Okay, so this is the last administration this year of Utah Aspire Plus. Hopefully it's not new that English was dropped. That happened last year, so it's just the reading subtest. The same thing, we're gonna highly recommend that students do the training test. Again, they're not for content. It's to learn the platform. So, and even the training tests for Utah Aspire Plus, they are, they really are not content. Like the questions are like, what button do you select to move to the next question, right?
That's the test nav tutorial.
That's a test nav tutorial, but also like for the training tests, like they are not meant for content. Okay, so training tests, we would love to hear that, hey, these are required by our district for our policy. That would be great, but again, students should not be sitting down to take UA Plus the first time online, and that's their first time actually interacting with the test. So please remember training tests, and that this spring is the last time we will have Utah Aspire Plus. So say your fond farewells as you are administering it, and we will keep you updated on the integration of 9th and 10th ELA back into RISE. We are working on it now, and we will give you all the tools and updates as they become available. And do keep an eye out. I will be sending out recruitment opportunities as we develop the 9th and 10th grade ELA RISE assessment. So I'll send that out in an upcoming AD memo for you to all to share with your educators and your LEAs.
Thank you. Before we jump into RISE, I think we are ready for a break. So let's do 10 minutes and be back at 10:30.
All right. We'll talk RISE mathematics then. You can go to the next slide. So we've received questions about that about this. This is just a reminder that, especially, we've had item writing groups and committees as we've done the test development, write clusters for us, and they may have come back to the schools and districts and shared their experience. Also, we've had these field tested, these clusters. We're going to do the same again, field test. We're not going to have live operational clusters on a test that will count for student scoring until we have the new and approved standards on the summative assessment. So that could be several years down the road. And we'll let you know. Those are still in the process. But we do have clusters for math in the RISE benchmarks and training tests. Next slide. We have a new calculator feature. This would apply for math. It also applies to science as well, but neither of my colleagues in science or math are here. They're doing other things. So you can see there just the way this works, that students can copy and paste and their answer and be able to use the calculator a little more flexibly. Next slide. And then this is from Katie specifically, because we've done quite a bit of high school math development recently, and actually this week was secondary math 3. And so she just wanted to share a thank you for all those educators who've come and supported that test development. If you're interested in that or would share the listserv link, that's down below. So that way educators can participate in our test development. The way the listserv works is educators just sign up and join the listserv. We send out information, elementary and secondary, to that same listserv, and then they can let us know if they're interested, and then we go through the process of selecting. So please share that. And we find, at least I found, I get to sit in for the high school yesterday, and it seems really helpful for educators to be able to work with others throughout the state so they get different perspectives. It was awesome to see secondary math 3 and high school science be able to write items, and they were specifically focusing on clusters, which was really cool to see them work together and partner up. And so it's a great PL opportunity for them, as well as benefiting the RISE development.
Yeah. We definitely need more secondary math and science educators, because we have a lot that we'll have the summer of 2027. Most likely a lot of different workshops and a lot of things happening. So I will have Sam share the science math serve. Please share that with your educators. It really is a phenomenal opportunity for them to really get a good understanding of what the assessment is going to look like and participate in that working and creating of the assessment, or validating the data, or even being involved in the standard setting when we get to that point.
Next.
All right, for stamp testing, go ahead and go to the next slide. Just as a reminder, the window closes December 12th. And with the Thanksgiving holiday, this is just your FERPA-friendly reminder that there's only 8 more days of general testing administration window. Because if you are following what we strongly encourage at USBE, you are not doing general testing that last week. That would be reserved for your makeup students, or if you had any with NRs that are going to still need to be doing a retest at some point. So just kind of be aware of that. I've also just put the links here for easy access to our Avant page as well as for the reporting site, if you have not yet gone into access what reporting would look like. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Just to know, we have had some questions on the best way to monitor test completion. Know that right now, there is not a completion dashboard for us. It is on my list of requested enhancements, so maybe later, but not today. That does mean that you need to be very vigilant and paying attention to what schools have completed tests, because it's only going to show you what schools have completed tests. It's not going to tell you who hasn't. So it requires a little more vigilance on your part currently. So just kind of be aware of that. Just as a reminder, if a student is issued an NR, that just means not rateable. It means the test can be retaken, and this is handled locally. This wasn't the case last year, so there is still some confusion. If it's an NR, it's going to be reset. You can go ahead and log in. Just work with Avant. Your teacher can even do it if the NR is there. All right. However, if the student has received a 0 or the teacher disagrees with the rating that was given for either a speaking test or a writing skills test, there is a rating review process. And that rating review process does not start with email Elise. Just so you know, it's not step 1. Although it seems like it might have to, but it doesn't. So this is also linked on our Avant on the Avant site. There's a step-by-step process, and I'm going to just kind of walk through you with it really quickly. That's actually the next slide. There is a form that is linked on the Avant site. Okay, that form is submitted to USBE for review. Spoiler alert, that person's not me either.
Or me.
No, it's not even Scott. Okay. USBE will then approve or deny the score review and communicate that with Avant. The results are then sent to the person who requested it, as well as Carl Bowman, who is our dual language immersion specialist, within 21 business days. So if you're looking at this thinking that you wanted a student to retest, that's your big fat hint to start earlier. Because if you are sending in rating review requests today, tomorrow, next week, you could fall outside the 21-day window. Could they get it to you earlier? Absolutely, but it's not a guarantee. So just kind of be aware of that. Okay, also findings after a rating review cannot be challenged even if you still disagree. Okay. Jeff, we were told that a student that hit record and didn't record anything was then able to reset the test. If you want me to investigate, Jeff, you can send me the SSID, but also know that you can review what a student submits to make sure that it didn't record even just static, because if it did that, I can't reset it either. Just because I don't hear any voice doesn't mean a student gets to reset it. So if you want me to look into it, I'm absolutely happy to. A couple of other couple of other training pieces I want to focus on with STAMP are on the next couple of slides. So first is how to review NRs as an LEA user. The other thing we're going to look at is how to review student responses. Okay, reviewing reviews. This first one was even brand new to me. It was lovely. So I knew that I had to share it with you. But if you figured it out on your own, magic. I'm so proud of you. With the second piece, reviewing student responses, this was included in the training that is recorded, but I wanted to hit on it again because I'm already getting so many questions, even from your teachers, because they don't know how to look at what their students responded with. So make sure that this also then trickles down to your teachers in the classroom. So the next slide, how to review NRs. When you log into the STAMP site, you're going to use the test taker search button. And then there's a set of filters that are shown there, and you'll want to set them specifically to rateable equals false. Okay, but fun fact, you can use these filters to search so many different things. Those drop-down menus have lots and lots of options, similar to the drop-downs that we see with test monitoring with RISE. Okay, so just know, Like this opened a whole new world of being able to search various tests for me. With the other filter options on the next slide, I just am giving you a quick view here of what actually shows up in those drop downs. The other really cool thing about the stamp filters is you can stack them. So you can add multiple. So you want it to filter by this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, this, and this, which is actually really kind of cool. So when Avant showed this to me last week, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Why didn't we know this before? They apologized profusely, and don't you worry, it will be in the training next year. It's already added because this is something that I think can really help you out. But that's how you can search for tests that are rated as NR if you want to just double check to make sure that your teachers are reaching out to have those reset. The next little piece that I wanted to go over is, again, how to review student responses. So this is where your teachers should be going before they contact USBE or fill out the form, specifically fill out the form if they want a rating review. I want your teachers to actually go in and see what was either recorded by the student or what was written by the student. And again, this is only for writing responses and speaking responses, okay? Everything else, the listening one and the reading one, are automatically scored, and those are in there as soon as they're finished. So to review, you just choose the class or the class with the student that you want to review. And then on the next slide, it will show you that you are going to click the student's last name. And when you click the student's last name, it's going to take you to like a student profile screen is going to pop up on the right-hand side. And you will note there at the bottom, there are blue hyperlinks that say like response 1, response 2, response 3. It will also show you the score, okay, that are next to that. If you click that little response button, it is going to then take you to where you can either hit play to listen to the recording, and I would encourage you to listen to the entire recording, because sometimes the first 10 seconds are silence. Maybe the student was still processing before they hit record, because I've already had people reach out and say, there's nothing recorded there. And there is. You just had to be patient and listen to the whole thing, okay? The other thing you can do is read what a student typed. So if it was a written response, the typed response is going to appear on the right-hand side opposite the prompt. I would also encourage your teachers to make sure they check the prompt, as we've already had people reach out wanting to have a reset done for a writing, because the writing was beautiful. It makes total sense. The student responded beautifully, but the problem was the student didn't actually answer the question that was asked. So make sure the teacher knows that they should be also just reviewing the prompt as well, so they know what the student was supposed to respond to. The next slide is just all of our contact information, because I know with a new system, sometimes it's hard to even remember who does what. And I'm absolutely happy to continue to like disseminate the email to who actually can answer your question. But if you want a quicker response, if you email the right person first, it does help a little bit. So just know the STAMP help desk has been incredibly responsive. Hopefully you've had similar experiences, but the feedback I have received has been very positive, which is great for us to hear as their partner. If you have any questions regarding the dual language immersion program or any reporting questions, those are going to be directed to Carl. Anything test administration or any system question, I'm happy to answer. Maureen will be back tomorrow to handle your rostering questions, because she does a much better job than I do, thank goodness. Jessica with accommodations, and Scott with testing ethics questions.
Louise, can you clarify, so the NR, the non-ratables, Avant has to reset that, correct?
Yes, Avant will reset them. They just need you to contact them to know that you want that second attempt set. Because again, a student may have responded in such a way that they don't want to take it again. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Awesome, Jeff. I'm so glad that you've had positive experiences with their help desk too within an hour. That's amazing. I love that. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to RISE. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because we've already talked about it a little bit. The mid-year window, though, is open. It does close for like a moratorium, though, on December 19th. So just know that any test that's been started does need to be completed within this window of time, but cannot be done anytime between December 20th or January 4th, because RISE will not be available during that time. Okay, and then just because of the way the calendar falls, I know that a lot of times our mid-year summative window ends up like closing on like March 2nd or 3rd. Just kind of be aware that the way that the calendar falls this year, it is bumped back into February. So just a note that it might feel earlier than it has in years past. Okay. Benchmarks are still available during any of this. I'm not going to talk anymore about who takes the mid-year summative because I also did that already, but if you're still confused, send me an email and I'll try to still provide more clarity for you. Ashley's question, do we contact Maureen to see if any of our students are rostering for mid-year? Yes. Maureen is your rostering guru for all things. But if you email me, I will CC her and send it along.
Me too.
Couple of things just to kind of be aware of as far as updates go. We had some iOS questions that are currently being updated because apparently iOS changed the way that they are labeling things. And so instead of it being like iOS 14, 15, 16, they are now going to the year. So the support came out after the go live date. Yes, 26.1 is going to be supported and CAI is working to get that reference added to their manual just to add some clarity for you if those numbers are getting confusing because iOS changed their naming convention for their operating system updates. Also, the TAM has been updated now to include the scripting that is more reflective of what students will see for benchmark and interim administration, because as you've probably seen, the secure browser had a bit of a facelift, and so they enter things still in the same order, but sometimes it's a different screen that comes up. So it just looks a little bit differently than it had in years past. That has now been updated to better reflect what the student experiences, as well as to include new screenshots of the updated secure browser. We are still working though on reporting guide updates. So I know for those of you who have been anxiously waiting for more guidance with writing, that is coming. It's just not published in the reporting guide yet. The next two slides I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but I just wanted you to be aware of some of the feedback that we received from the survey that was sent out. I think it started in September, but maybe it was October. Anyway, about being able to allow some of your 11th and 12th grade students who are going to potentially be enrolled in RISE rostering or RISE triggering courses starting next year. I just wanted to include what some of the feedback was that became an overwhelming majority. So if you're reading this and you're like, I don't agree with that, that's not what I put. This is like just the majority. These were consensus-y items, so to be aware of, okay? So just some benefits for teachers, some logistical advantages, and then the next slide goes over even some of what we already covered a little bit with our the accountability concerns that we have already talked with TAC and APAC about, those types of things. But I wanted to give you an idea of what other LEAs have been saying regarding being able to test 11th and 12th grade students in RISE triggering courses in the future. For Utah Aspire Plus, just a few items to note. Adam system is going to load your 2026 administration students on January 5th. So kind of be aware of that, that's when that will start. I've linked the schedule of events here for you. If you plan to create proctor groups, which is optional, many of you realize that it's a lot easier to not even do that anymore. But if you love to go old school, you still can, by all means. You just can't start till January 14th because I tend to get some questions that like, oh, my kids are there, but now I can't create proctor groups. There is a lag in that functionality. Waiting for the rostering, like this kid's missing, moving kiddos around. It just gives us a little bit of time to let some of that dust settle before you start putting kids in proctor groups. We've already talked about how remote administration is still going to be available for online students. Also wanted to note here that if you have students who are completing paper forms, they do need to test in person, even if they are a fully remote in an online setting, okay? For report assets, I've had a lot of questions come in about how you can't see your ISRs from last year and why can't you add things? Winter Sports School has just finished their administration, and so when their scores are loading and reports are loading, it renders the system unavailable for all users. Like, you can still go in there, but you're not going to be able to access reports in the same way that you have. And I've put this in the AD memo. It must have been overlooked. You're very busy people. But I'm still getting lots of emails about why ISRs are not there. So I wanted to point out that this is why, but know that all of your other archived reporting, all of this becomes available again starting November 21st. If after that you can't see things, absolutely let me know and we can work with Pearson to see what might be the problem. But if you're not seeing things currently, it's because you're not supposed to, and it will come back, I promise. In case you missed it last month, these are the Utah Aspire Plus trainings that will be coming up. The tech training for your technology specialists, or if you wear multiple hats, is the 21st. And then our administration training will be the 29th. When you go to log into Midas to register for those, note that they are two separate sections. So one of those might apply to you or both might apply to you. So just kind of be aware of that. Again, these are from the LEA level, but if you have testing coordinators in schools who you would like to have attend, they are welcome to. If you have teachers who want to attend, they are also welcome to, but note that the time this time is mid-morning, so that probably doesn't work with many of their schedules. But as always, the training will be recorded and you can watch it on your own time with your snacks and a blanket, and even at 2 times the speed if you want to. You can make me talk really fast if you're listening on YouTube.
Yes, sir.
Yes, even faster, more like you almost used to that. For ACT, comment from Hal. I'm worried about Aspire Plus motivation participation this year. Everyone knows this is the last year of being administered. Absolutely understandable. Still there.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to bring up, Hal, of how might we help schools value the information still and understand that it is our assessment and used in accountability, and the impacts of participating versus not participating on assessments and what that looks like for accountability, for designations, all of that stuff I think is important. So how to help our teachers and students still feel value in the assessment, knowing that this is the last year of the administration. Don't know the answer to that, but I think that might be a good discussion to have with how do we ensure that we're helping people to understand that participation is still important, even though we're excited about changes to come in future years. I don't know that I have an answer for that, or if people have comments about that right now, but I think that's something to consider, what kind of information we can share with people to help support the importance of participating in the assessments. So thank you, Lisa.
Now, for ACT, on the next slide, I have posted the link to the schedule of events, but it's also on the ACT Now resources site. The load with students has occurred. It was earlier last week. If you are missing students or have questions regarding students on your rosters, you can start reaching out to Maureen with those again tomorrow. I also included here links to the adding user roles as well as creating a user account videos in case you need to do that for users in your LEAs or in your schools. And just some general information, now through January 30th are when you need to kind of go in and start verifying enrollment, test assignments, those types of things. Your site readiness can come a little bit later, but your verification, Scott says, he even told me, he's like, this is very important, make sure you reiterate this. And since it's my first time with ACT, I even highlighted it because it's very important. And I am sure I will learn of its importance on January 31st. So.
Most of the emails come in going, I can't assign this student to a testing.
The importance will hit me and you alike on January 31st. So I'm trying to message it early that you want to start looking at those things now. We have completed 2 of our 4 scheduled trainings, the accommodation training and the site readiness training. I linked them here, even though you can still have a hyperlink with Stripe through text. So they are linked there if you need to access the accommodation training or the site readiness training at any time. They're also linked though on the ACT resources. The pre-test administration training is coming up December 11th. and then test day administration January 15th. Again, with these, they are all just going to be on Zoom. You do not need to register for these, so you can share the link with anyone at any time and they can just click on it. These also, though, again, recorded in case the timeline doesn't work with your current schedule. You can always go back onto our YouTube channel and watch them. I wanted to also put in a quick plug here for Schmoop because it's been a little bit since we've talked about it. This is one of those tools that is free for students in grades like 8 through 12, 8 through 11, 8 through 12, but more applicable for grades 8 through 11 for your ACT prep. It's super, super easy, okay? I would encourage your students to, especially, I mean, we're coming up on when there's some school holiday breaks. I know not every kid on planet Earth wants to do ACT prep over their holiday break, but someone might want to do ACT prep on their holiday break. And I feel like we should give them the opportunity to do so if that is their choice. So make sure that you are still messaging this. On the next slide, I've also included just some updates that we received from our vendor on a call this last week, some updates that they've made for their ACT specific training. They've added some step-by-step videos, which are really helpful. They're also nice and short. I've gone through and watched a few of them. We're talking less than 3 minutes. Okay, so nice and easy, very short, very consumable. They also are adding some new things where there's going to be reduced question set, so it will better mirror the enhanced ACT. That go live for some of these enhancements starts next week. Okay, so that students who are taking the practice tests through Schmoop will get a better experience that mirrors the enhanced ACT. And then on the next slide, if you are looking at how to communicate the use for Schmoop to users in your LEA, I would recommend starting with the student user guide test prep website with your students, as well as the teacher user guide test prep website with your teachers. I've also included like a one-pager that can go home or be shared with parents. There is a bootcamp guide. There's even a data guide. The data guide allows students to kind of track their own usage and their own advancement or progress through some of Schmoop's lessons that are there. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Just wanted to reiterate that this is a tool that is there and available, and it is free for your students to use. So the more we advertise it or publicize it, I think the better usage they will have. Is it worth noting that our contract with Schmoop does end in 2025? So it might change, we don't know, but just know there will still be an ACT prep program. It just may not be this one, but I want to make sure that your students who are taking ACT can utilize the prep resources that we have available to them if they choose to do so. I think that's the end. Ta-da-da!
That is the end.
Let's start.
Make an end slide.
Here we go.
So far.
Thank you so much for your questions today, your feedback. It's always appreciated. If you continue to have other questions or think of other things as you go about the days and weeks, please reach out to us. We're always happy to engage in conversations with you all. We appreciate the feedback that we've gotten over the last little bit about concerns or feedback or for improvements or things like that we've been able to reach out and respond to you all about, and look forward to continuing our partnership with all of you. So thank you. We hope you're all able to enjoy some time off next week and take a moment to think about all the things that you have gratitude for. And as always, thank you to the team for preparing the slides and for your support of our people in the field. I think that's it. Let us know if you have other questions, and have a good day.